Okay, happy Monday, everybody. Today is Yud Daled Kislev, the 14th day of Kislev. If you're Lubavitch, if you're Chabad, it's very significant because today is the day that the Rebbe got married to the Rebbetzin, 1928 in Poland, right before the war is about to break out. It's significant in the Chabad Jewish calendar, the Chabad calendar. The Jews have one calendar, Chabad has another calendar. So another calendar, then the big day of Yutes Kislev is coming up. That is the Rosh Hashanah for Hasidus. That is when you'll see that all of these Rebbes went to jail. And anytime they get out of jail, it's a big party. I mean, who wouldn't throw a party for getting out of jail? So they get out of jail, spiritually speaking, it represents a breakthrough that everything that happens in this world is a reflection of what's going on above. It says Hashem tzilcha. Hashem is your tzilcha. Hashem is your shadow. That the idea of reflection, shadow. It mimics exactly who you are and how you're moving, how you're acting. So Hashem is our shadow, and then it says another place where Hashem's shadow, where we reflect what Hashem does. Anyway, what's going on down here below represents what's really going on above. So there was a gezerah, there was a decree that Chassidus, which is the essence of the Torah, the essence of all parts of Torah. It's not an explanation of Kabbalah. There's Chassidus on Kabbalah. There's Chassidus on Chumash, which is what I usually give you. There's Chassidus on Halacha. What is the deepest dimension of what's going on? Shouldn't be revealed, which is what the Baal Shem Tov started, and it shouldn't be revealed. And what the Alter Rebbe was trying to accomplish was, before the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, the one who wrote the Tanya, also known as the Baal HaTanya, which has become widely accepted in the Jewish world. At first it wasn't. It was very shunned, much like the Rambam. The Rambam's books were burnt when he originally wrote them, especially more Nevuchim. But now it's considered part of almost the canon of Torah, you could say. It was a reflection of, he was trying to take, what is Chabad? Chabad is taking the deepest concepts of godliness and being able to not just have faith about them, like, oh, I accept them, I don't really understand, but to understand them. And when you understand something, it can affect you emotionally. That's what we ultimately want. We want Torah and everything to affect us emotionally. When you have an idea affect you emotionally, that means that's you. You are your emotions. That is the animal soul, which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's exactly what you want. You want the animal soul to get excited about Judaism, about Yiddishkeit, or godly concepts. And he systematically explained the deepest parts of Torah so that it wasn't just for the elite, it was for everybody. Every single person can have access to it. And the Rebbeim, the 7 Chabad Rebbes, took everything to the next step. They brought more metaphors to be able to enable us to be able to understand it. Now he had to have a breakthrough. So the idea of him going, when he went to prison, he knew that going to prison wasn't because of the slanderous reports that the other Jews are always the ones putting other Jews in jail. Yeah, we always shoot ourselves in the foot. Whatever, it's classic. It's always been. We're going to talk about Hanukkah. Hanukkah is all about that. It's exactly what Hanukkah is about. The Hellenists, these were Jews. So he wasn't sure if what he was doing was right by printing the Tanya, and ultimately it came out that it was the right thing to do, and he came out of prison, and we see that this is what was meant to happen, that Chassidus was supposed to come about. And this is a huge celebration on Shabbos. This coming Shabbos, we'll have Yud Tes Kislev, the 19th day of Kislev. It is the Rosh Hashanah. It's the beginning of Chassidus, what Chassidus is all about. It's a renewed energy. So if you're in my neck of the woods, you should come by. There'll be a big Farbrengen, obviously. There's a big Farbrengen taking place all over the world, not just in Chabad. Other Chassidim take part. When I was in yeshiva in Mayanot 20 years ago, which was the first yeshiva I went to, it was tremendous. There would be hundreds of people, not Chabad, that would come to join in the Farbrengens and learn more about Chassidus and learn more about Chabad. And now Chabad, Chassidus is mainstream. I mean, everybody is teaching it pretty much. They don't even realize it's Chabad Chassidus. But For those of you that joined Rabbi Weinberg's Tanya class, you kind of, I guess you get a little sneak peek. And also Rabbi Yeye Wilhelm's daily class. If you're not in Rabbi Yeye Wilhelm's daily Tanya class, whatever, it's always at random times. He's starting the cycle over of the Tanya this coming Shabbos. So on Sunday, they'll be starting over from the beginning, the entire Tanya. So if you want to do that, you can chap it around, you can jump on board. Okay, I want to speak a little bit about Hanukkah, and then I'll move in briefly into the Parsha. Hanukkah is coming up next week. What is Hanukkah? So Hanukkah, let me explain something to you. The destruction of the first temple happened in about 400 years before the Common Era. That is when the story of Purim, about the same time the story of Purim took place. We're not exactly sure when Purim took place. You guys know that? We're not exactly sure. There's a lot of doubt. I mean, there's to the actual date, even within the Jewish world. So let me just explain something to you. The destruction of the first temple happened in about the year 400 something, whatever, 400 BCE, 500 BCE. What happened? Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, came and took over. Just took us over, and they moved us down to Bavel, to Babylonia. We all went down to Babylonia, which is Iraq, Iran. His reign didn't last very long. It was like 8 years or something like that. Then Cyrus came, king of Persia. The Persian Empire came and took over. He took over. He was pretty cool. He was cool with the Jews. He had a very new, novel approach to how to conquer the world. He said, let's not try to make them ourselves. In other words, we're not trying to let cultures remain cultures, which is basically how people do it nowadays. You guys, you live your life. Just pay a tax to us. And whatever religion that we serve, you gotta pay homage to that religion as well. But for the most part, you can keep your clothes, stay where you live, just pay us our money. And so he allowed the Jews to go back to Jerusalem to build the temple. And then, of course, there were Jews that lived there that they didn't want it, because during that period of time that we lived in Babylonia, we quickly became integrated and secularized, because we were all about that. This was the first time we ever left Israel. Since we came into Israel, it was the first time we ever left Israel. So then we go and we explore like a new country and these new things, and we quickly do as the Romans do, but in this case, the Persians, we act like the Persians. And we had good lives. It was pretty good. So Zerubbabel King Cyrus took over Persia, said, Zerubbabel, you can go and take a bunch of Jews and go back to Jerusalem, start building the temple. We begin the construction, and then Jews came and slandered us, as they always do, saying that they're really building a temple and a kingdom, and they're setting up walls, and they're going to try to fight you, Cyrus. So Cyrus is like, all right, forget it. You guys can't do it. We come back down to Babylonia. Some of us remain there, but for the most part, we remain in Babylonia. Achashverosh takes over as king. He's whatever he is, a drunkard. Stays in power for about, I don't know, whatever, until he's like 70 or something like that. I don't know, it wasn't very long, 30 years, maybe 25, I don't know, maybe even less, like 20-something years. Then he has a kid with Esther. Esther has the son. The son's name is Darius, Daryavish. Darius he was not very frum. I don't think he knew he was Jewish, but he didn't really care about it. And he said, fine, Ezra, Nehemiah, you guys can go and build your temple. Go back, and we go and build our temple. So that lasts about 200 years. So we're building our temple for about 200 years. We were in there. Everything's all fine, hunky-dory. And then in the year, so Darius takes over. Not too long after Darius takes over, there's a new king in town. And his name is Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, and now it was a little bit while after, maybe like, let's say a generation later. So after Darius, somebody else took over. I don't exactly know who. Not worth mentioning, perhaps. The Jews are living in, not that many Jews. Most of the Jews are still living in Babylonia. Jews have been living in Babylonia since from the destruction of the first temple until the Shah was taken over in the 80s. So we've been living there for a very long time. Anyway, most of the Jews stayed there. And that still was like the main place of Torah learning. And that's why we have the Babylonian Talmud, right? Because we basically learn the Babylonian Talmud. Most of it's wherever the money is. Jews are wherever the money, meaning why money? Why? It's not that we care about money. It's just that it's not that we care about money. It's just that we need to be able to support the Torah learners. The Torah learners don't make nothing. They make nothing. Torah teachers and the Torah learners, they make nothing. They are supported by those that can support them. So they stay, the yeshivas and all the great, everything is wherever the money could be. And the balabatim, the people who have the money, are very glad to use their money for something so worthy of a cause. So it's the Zvulun and Yisachar classic joining together. Anyway, so here we are. We're in the Second Temple. We've been doing it for a couple hundred years or so. And then Alexander the Great, not a couple hundred years, 100 years or so. Alexander the Great comes and he starts to, he was very good to the Jews. He did not take over. He did not conquer Jerusalem. He conquered it, but he let us do whatever we wanted. He spared us. Very famous story. And he was very nice, and he bowed down to the Kohen Gadol and all these. He was very nice. He was, I guess, as nice as he could be. And out of appreciation for Alexander the Great, all of the Kohanim named their children Alexander. So Alexander became a Jewish name. Little factoid for you. Alexander is a Jewish. It's called Alexander Chassidim. There are many Jews. Sender, any Jew you meet named Sender, his name's Alexander. That's probably his real name. So he comes, and what is Alexander the Great bringing with him? What is his whole thing? Hellenism. He's bringing Hellenism. It's not like the Hellenism that we're going to see in the next 2 generations, but he brings Hellenism. What is Hellenism? Hellenism, basically, what is Greek society, this Greek culture. Alexander the Great dies very young. He does not live to be, I don't know, he's like 36, 35, 30, I don't know, something like somewhere in his 30s. So the people are going to take over and going to take his things to the next level. And this is where the Hanukkah story is going to come in. Alexander the Great comes and he brings Hellenism. Hellenism is about worshiping the body. They wake up in the morning and they kiss their muscles and work in the gymnasiums. And Jewish people, we are Yoshvi Oyolim. We sit in the tents of Torah learning where we get flabby skin and we're always vitamin D deficient. And, we hardly eat. And that's just that, but that's how we are. That's who we are. So, Alexander the Great passes away. A guy named, he had 2 generals, and one of them was Ptolemy. Ptolemy with a P. Figure that one out. Ptolemy comes and he takes Hellenism to the next level, and the Jews love this. We are getting really into Hellenism. Hellenism is essentially devoid of godliness. They don't believe in spirituality. It's about the body and materialism. And what do I see? What can I measure? What can I, if I can't taste, touch, and smell it, it doesn't exist. Right? That's the idea. And so there's a large focus on the physical, the material, which does come with benefits. There are great advances in sciences, which include medicine, and all of and because of their incredible immersion, there's so much more brain power in understanding medicine and astronomy. And it actually helps us in our Torah learning. The Jews, we kind of had like a mixed. They were very much into education, intellectualism, and that obviously could go either way. We see that on campus. You think you're so smart that whatever your opinion is it should be gold, and that's what it be, and then it ends up being very dangerous and hurts people. But there's also very good. There's a lot of good to it. So we had great advancements in understanding how the world works and understanding Torah. Anyway, that quickly kind of hurt us. The Jewish people started getting too much into this. And they eventually, anybody who learns Tanya learns, how does a person who's grew up religious, believing in God, only eating kosher and all these different things, how do they become not frum? How did they become not frum? I've said it many times because it's brought in Tanya. It's overindulgence in the permissible. It's about overindulgence. Overindulging in something, the Rambam says, is the most harmful act you can do for yourself. It desensitizes you spiritually, and it makes you, you ever feel like very full and you get irritable? You feel yourself. The ego comes out. You're irritable. Like you could become irritable. Anything that overindulges in something physical, it will make you irritable, essentially, ultimately, because it's not satisfying you. Anyway, that's the whole thing. So they overindulge in what the Greek culture is. They become Hellenists, essentially. And they start believing in everything that they say happens nowadays, all the time, there's Hellenists. The Jews, I mean, you can see it. The biggest opponents to Israel, the state of Israel, doing what they need to do for their people, the leaders are the Jews. That's just classic Hellenists. Because they bow down to whatever the modern culture is. I don't care about, I'm a Jew, but like I don't believe in the spirituality of it. There's no such thing as spirituality. There's no God. If there's a God, then I have to do whatever God tells me to do. And I want to do whatever I want to do. That's materialism, that's Hellenism. So they essentially Ptolemy, he ends up dying. Then there's a guy Antiochus, and then there's another Antiochus. And this other Antiochus IV, says, okay, I want more Hellenism. Now, when you have, what ends up happening is when the Jews, they're slowly becoming like more conservative to like reform. These are made up terms, but conservative to reform. If there's no, I don't believe in the validity of the Torah. Okay, I'm a Jew, and there's like anything that makes sense in Judaism, I'll agree with. But if it doesn't make sense, then I'm not going to do it. So I understand the idea of sacrificing something. Yeah, I worked hard for something, and it came in the form of, let's say, money, and I'll give it to a higher cause. I'll give it to a good cause. It's like as if I'm investing myself into this higher cause. So what they started doing was, there are sacrifices. We'll continue the sacrifices, but let me bring a pig. I don't see why a kosher animal. Why is a giraffe any more kosher than a horse? I don't know. They're both very tame and nice, and whatever. So it started getting a little bit out of hand, and Yehuda Maccabee. Basically, it was a bit of a. It was looking really bad, and this is about the year 186 BC. The Torah, this is towards the end of the destruction of the Second Temple. By the way, the destruction of the temple was going to be destroyed about 150 years later. So, I don't know, 200 years later. Probably about 200 years later. Not very long. And even though that's when it completely got destroyed, people were already leaving, and the divinity of the Holy Temple was clearly diminishing, and people could see it. And there ended up a lot of inward fighting, civil wars. And this was a civil war. Hanukkah really was a civil war led by Jews, the Hellenist Jews. So the Yehuda Maccabee, it was a true miracle. There was like 200 of them versus 25,000 or whatever it is. Which brings me back to the Che Guevara reference that I brought in the beginning, that Che Guevara, when he was, Che Guevara let him rot. He's a horrible, horrible person. And he only did something bad. But what was interesting about him was that he was able to get 120, 150 guys and fight the Bolivian army of 20,000, and he was making a tremendous impact, and he was like killing them like crazy, because it was kind of guerrilla. It's guerrilla warfare until the Americans came in, and that was the end of that. Okay, may Che die. Whatever, he's a horrible man. Anyway, Yehuda Maccabee, so Lahavdil. Yehuda Maccabee comes and he gets his kids, and they lead this revolt, and they ultimately win. And he is from the Kohanim, the Hashmonaim family, and now they win. And that victory, if this is something you should understand, when you light the candles, we're going to light the candles, and I'll speak more about halachas of Hanukkah next week. I'm just giving you a very brief background story. When you light the candles, you're going to Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Yeah, you give the blessing of Hanukkah. And there's another thing that we're supposed to say in the Siddur. And it's all about the miracle of the oil that we found in the temple. Yeah, there was a big war. The temple got like messed up a lot. There was like a lot of idols in there and whatever. And all of the oil that was pure oil, holy, spiritually pure oil, was contaminated by the Greeks. That was like what they were all about. They were like this whole idea of purity and kosher. This is like a stupid spiritual idea. It doesn't make any sense. So they systematically went in very methodically and made everything not kosher. They tried to make everything not kosher. Then the miracle is that they found one with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. It was never touched. And that was the ultimate miracle. And that is what we sell. That is what we talk about that paragraph when we light the candles. That's why there's always oil. Yeah, we have donuts and latkes and very oily things. Remember the oil. However, when you read the Siddur and you mention Hanukkah in the Amidah, you'll see that you mentioned Hanukkah. It mentions nothing about the oil. It talks about the war that we won. There was another miracle going on. And one of the reasons why, what was the bigger miracle? Was the bigger miracle the oil, this finding of the oil, which for us is actually kind of hard to relate to, because it was a miracle. Any of these like spiritual miracles, like we can't. I don't know, like it's hard for me to relate. Why? And it's hard for all of us, a lot of us, to relate, because we live in a very physical world. I don't see miracles. I have to open my eyes, but like on the average day, I don't see a bunch of miracles. But I could tell you, if an army of 150 men fought against the Greek Syrian army of that period, which was the most advanced and everything like that, and there was 30,000 of them, and they beat them, that speaks to me. And that spoke to the Jews, the Hellenist Jews that lived during that period of time. So the rabbi said we have to promote this miracle because that speaks to the Nefesh Bahamas. That speaks to the emotions of every single type of person over there. And it was a miracle. It was a miracle that God gave. And it was a miracle that it allowed them to like think a little bit beyond, like, okay, you're right. This is like incredible. This doesn't make any sense. And that had a tremendous effect upon them that ultimately allowed us to, that led us to reestablish our kingship and monarchy and, in Jerusalem. Like, so that was a miracle that spoke to everybody. But there was a deeper miracle going on, which was the miracle of the oil. It's just very important to know. Ultimately, Yehuda Maccabee and the Hashmonaim family were bad. They were bad. They did not Yehuda Maccabee. He ultimately had a grandson, Yonasan, a Kohen Gadol. Kohanim are not allowed to be kings. The kingship belongs to David, the Davidic dynasty, who are not Kohanim. They're not priests. A Kohen Gadol is not allowed to be a king. He could be a great Torah scholar, and he could be, but he's not allowed to be king. And they claim themselves to be king. Basically, they claim themselves to be everything but step just short of being a king. People disliked it. They disliked him, and that just reflected. It showed us that things were amiss during that period of time, and it was ultimately led down the destruction of the Second Temple later on. But we celebrate, nevertheless, we celebrate that period of time. We celebrate that miracle, and the miracle of Hanukkah is also ultimately fighting. It's a fight that we still fight till today, and then we were victorious. We were victorious. That we fought the darkness within ourselves, the civil war. Now there's a civil war within ourselves. Yeah, we also. Spirituality sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Godliness, sometimes I'm into it, sometimes I'm not into it. The world, sometimes into it, not into it. But it's fighting that and revealing. There's a lot of chizz behind, but in revealing the ultimate truth that there's godliness at the core, and we're all united. We'll speak more about it. I just wanted to get into the history of it, but we'll speak more about it next week. I think people find it a little bit interesting, so I wanted to explain. Okay. So that's kind of good. We spoke about Yisrael. Now, let's go into a little bit of the Parsha. We don't have so much time. I apologize. But we'll go right into the Parsha. So the Parsha is Vayishlach. Yaakov has spent 20 years with Lavan, his horrible uncle and father-in-law, and he escapes with his entire family. He's like, I got to get out of here. And he leaves with mega millions. He is a mega millionaire. And he's leaving. Lavan ultimately catches up with him and says, hey, what's going on? You're taking my family. And they're like, God stops Lavan and says, you let them go. This is the end of last week's Parsha. You let them go and do what you got to do. I'll take care of you. So he lets them go. And Yaakov is nervous because he hasn't seen Esav in 34 years, 20 years at Lavan, 14 years at Yeshiva. He was in Yeshiva before he went to Lavan's house. And he hasn't seen him, and he wants to know if he's mad. So he sends messengers to go find out if Esav's still mad, and they come back and they say, oh yeah, he's really mad. He's still very mad. He's got 400 men. Yaakov gets frightened. He says he gets very scared. And he says a very famous line, I've become, he says to God, the reason why I'm scared is because I feel myself, I'm very humbled because of all the goodness that you've given me. You've given me a lot of good, all the kindness that you've shown me. I wonder if I've depleted the kindness account. So he felt like he ran out of merits, and So he does three things. He does three things to prepare for battle. His family's on the way, and Asa found out that he's left, and that they're ultimately going to meet. So he does three things. The first thing he does, Yaakov, he sends gifts. He sends a tremendous amount of animals, his livestock, worth mega millions, and he sends it in a way. It's not just that he sends him the gift. The packaging is beautiful. He sends him enough animal. He sends them in like groups. It says that he said he had 100 dogs. The Medrash says he had 100 dogs. He sent them 100 dogs. Now, what are the dogs for? Each dog takes care of a herd of sheep. So if you have hundreds of dogs, it means there's hundreds of herds of sheep. I mean, we're talking about like astronomical amounts of money, probably like $1 billion or whatever it is. And he sends it to him over the course of days. And he sends them, when Asaph sees them, he sees the first group, and it takes them all day to come. And then there's a break during the night. And then the next day, then he sees the other group coming, the other group of animals. And it's just unbelievable. And he just sees the money, dollar signs, like this is fantastic. So he sends them gifts. Then he prepares for battle. He davens to Hashem, and he prepares for war. Sorry. He sends him gifts, bribery. The Torah says you should always try to bribe your enemies first. That could work. You should do that. The second thing is he prays to Hashem, and the third thing is he prepares for battle. He separates his family into two, so if Esau attacks one, the other one can escape. So therefore we see this is how everything is in life. That when we need something, we pray for it, but you also have to work physically, materially to get it. You have to prepare, you have to battle with it. That makes the vessel. Excuse me, it's so cold in here. The Gemara says, excuse me, they're going to meet each other, and Yaakov is going to bow down 8 times. He calls him Lord, and he bows down 8 times. The Gemara says because he was like too much placating. It was too much honor that he was giving Esau, and not that showed that he had like a certain lack of emunah, a lack of faith. God punished him, and therefore us, with 8 generations of terrible kings. We had kings. We've had good kings, and we've had very bad kings. Achal and Menashe, some really bad kings. So yeah, now God wouldn't punish us like that, I don't think, at least not me, because I'm not holding on the level of Yaakov. But for someone like him, I guess he should have known better. Anyway, he goes and he meets, and when he's about to meet him, he places Dinah in a box. He didn't want Asaph to see her, and she agreed with it. Dinah said that's fine. She didn't want to be taken by Asaph. Asaph would have seen her, thought she was beautiful, and she said to herself, I can't change him. Why would I marry him? Things were obviously very different back then. I can't marry him because I'm not going to be able to change him. So therefore, let me be like my mother. My mother physically disfigured herself, right? Her eyes, she messed up her eyes, so she would look slightly disfigured so that Asaph wouldn't want to marry her. And that was a mitzvah for Leah to do. Leah knew that it would be better for me to try to marry Yaakov and not marry Asaph. And she was rewarded for that. She was rewarded with many kings. Dinah was punished for doing that. So here, why? Because she actually did have the ability to change him. And so therefore there was a consequence to that action that she's ultimately going to have. Now, this is a very severe consequence. And of course, it's not fair what's going to happen to her. I mean, there's no words to describe what's going to happen to her, obviously. But I'm just telling you as the Torah says. But one lesson we can learn from this, we'll talk about what happened to her, was what is a mitzvah for one might be an avera for another. Yeah, you don't lower your standards just because, it's very easy to hang around people with lower standards and you'll be like, okay, I'm kind of like the king of the lower standards people. It can be an avera for you, and ultimately it'll lead to terrible consequences. She did have an ability to change him, and she should not have hit herself in the box. She should have protested, which you have to understand. It's also like there was like a lack of clarity, which I think is very relatable. Like we don't always know what is the right thing to do in this situation. Well, if I look at my mother and my father's also agreeing that this is the right thing to do, so I'll go ahead and do it. she must have known within herself, but I know better. I know myself better than my parents know me. I know what I'm capable of. But she went ahead and she said, she bought into the argument, and ultimately it had a consequence. That's a lesson for all of us, that you have a lot more strength than people give you, or people might tell you. It's very important to be surrounded by good people. It's extremely important, the Torah says, that could help build you up, but you can't sell yourself short. You're not allowed to do such a thing. Okay, so they go, they hug. Yaakov, Esav loves the gifts, and fine. Very important thing. Sorry. When they're about to meet Esav, it says Yaakov, before they meet, it says Yaakov leaves in the middle of the night and he goes back to Haran because he forgot some jugs. He forgot like vases. Now, Chassidus explains that the reason why he went back for them, seemingly, which was like a horrible idea, is because a tzaddik knows, like we spoke about many times before, we all have the things in life that we're supposed to elevate. What elevate means, there's an ember of a godly core, and we have to try to extract it and fan it, make it grow, reveal the godliness. Now, for all of us, we don't know where to find those sparks or embers, as they're called. God puts us in situations, and we have to look at the situation and be like, okay, how do I reveal godliness over here? What's like a very easy, a very digestible way for me to reveal godliness? A tzaddik knows, a righteous person knows where to find those embers and extract them. And his possessions are extracted. The godliness is extracted from him, and he holds on to them and he utilizes them. And he doesn't just leave them by the wayside. So he had to go back to get his jugs, these vases that were his possessions, because he has to continue using them as an expression of godliness, a way to express godliness. So he goes back, and on his way back, he fights with an angel. This angel is the archangel of Esav, a messenger of God, and they fight. They fight the entire night. Which is ultimately the representation of the Jewish people and Esav. Esav ultimately is Rome, right? Is Rome, which is our culture nowadays. There's the Ishmael, Muslim, Arab culture, and then there's the Roman culture, and that's basically what is in the world. And the Jewish people are always fighting with those two. So here we're fighting here. There was a bit of a stalemate. But the angel struck the sciatic nerve in the thigh of Yaakov, to which he forever had a limp, and because of that, we don't eat the sciatic nerve of an animal. We actually, Ashkenazim don't even eat the entire part of that animal. Sephardim just rip out the sciatic nerve. And Yaakov says, "Bless me." And he said, "I'm going to tell you the truth. Your name is not going to, there's going to come a time God's going to tell you your name is not going to be Yaakov anymore, even though it will continue to be Yaakov, but your name will be Yisrael, Israel, which means Kisarusa im Hashem, because you wrestled with God and you were victorious and you won. Which means getting involved in the world. He's victorious. If you get involved in the world, you face opposition and struggles, impulses, all these different things, you can overcome them. That's essentially what it means. Okay, fine. They meet. I have to go very quickly because we're almost done. They meet. Esav kisses Yaakov. There's going to be dots over the name Esav. When it says kissing, that Esav kissed Yaakov. If you look in the Torah, there's dots, all these dots, ink dots over kissing. Rashi tells us it means that he didn't really mean it. It was just like he took at that moment he forgot himself, and it was like, "Oh, Malik, I love you, man. You gave me so much food. You gave me so much money. I love you," but he didn't really love it. Okay, just moving on really quickly. There's Dinah is ultimately going to be punished by Shechem. She's going to be punished for hiding in the box. Shechem is going to take her and rape her, and then Shimon and Levi, who are 13 and 14 years old, trick the entire city of Shechem to have a bris milah. They should have a bris. Everyone gets infected on the third day. They're all very weak and tired, and they come and they kill everybody. Okay, nothing happens to the Jewish people. Yaakov thinks, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" Nothing happens to them. And the Jewish people continue. Yaakov and his family continue on their way. They make it to Bethlehem. And Rachel is pregnant, and she gives birth, and she dies during childbirth. She gives birth to Binyamin, the last son. She dies. Yaakov buries her there. He saw with Ruach HaKodesh, with Nevuah, with prophecy, that she needs to be buried there. because she is the one that's ultimately going to be the protector of the Jewish people. She is the Yiddish Mama. She is the real Jewish mother. And she does not go to Ma'aras Machpelah, to Hebron with everybody else, where they rest in peace. She stays on the front lines. Her neshama lives on and still protects the Jewish people. We spoke about she's called the mother bird, circling the nest, waiting for the eagle, Mashiach, to come and take over the nest, but she protects the nest. She's a mother who works tirelessly. And then we end off with Yitzchak passes away, Esav passes away, his head gets chopped off. I'll end the story with Esav. Esav's head is buried in Hebron. Whatever. When Yitzchak, I'll tell you guys the story very quickly and we'll end here. Yitzchak passes away, and Esav and Yaakov meet back up to bury their father. There was a disagreement as to where Esav's plot is. Once they get there, there was a disagreement about who should be in the front carrying the casket. And Esav says, I'm the firstborn. I should be in front. And Yaakov says, no, you gave it to me. I'm really the firstborn. You sold it to me, and I get it. And there's this back and forth. And the men of Esav are standing by Esav, and the children of Yaakov are standing behind Yaakov. Dan has a son, Dan. Yeah, Dan is one of the children of Yaakov, and he has a son. The son's name is Cheresh, and Cheresh means deaf. He's deaf. He couldn't hear. He had no idea. Ultimately, he's going to have the most children, right? You guys know this. The one with the special needs, even though someone has special needs, doesn't mean they can't build an empire. They can't be extremely influential. In fact, he became one of the most influential. One of the classic ideas in Torah. Anyway, he sees what's going on, and he sees, but he doesn't understand what's going on. He can't hear. And the brothers tell him with sign language that Esav's causing problems. So there was a document when Esav sold the birthright to Jacob. They wrote a document that said that the birthright has been sold. Jacob tells his son Naphtali, who's exceptionally fast, to run back to my house and go get the document. So they're waiting there, and Cheresh is getting really mad. And he's like, what is going on? Like, we need to bury, this is so disrespectful to my grandfather. We have to bury him. And Esav, he sees Esav screaming and screaming, but he doesn't know what he's saying. And finally he says, to heck with this. He takes out his sword and he chops off Esav's head. Esav's head rolls into a burial plot. Everyone was like, whoa. Esav's men run away, and they bury Yitzchak in his rightful place. Esav's head is buried in the place that he wanted to be buried, but ultimately Yaakov will be buried in his rightful place. But Esav's head is there. But the head made it. The head made it there. And that's the end of the story over there. Anybody have any questions? I have to end here. I'm so sorry. It's a good story.
Shalom, shalom. Yes, this is Katerina.
Hi.
Shalom, Shabbat Tov. Hi. Just so the son of Dan is the one who killed Esav.
Yep. Chops off his head.
Oh. Okay.
So if you go to Hebron, they'll tell you that all the forefathers and the four mothers, except for Rachel, are buried here, and Esav's head.
Oh, and the body's not.
Yeah, the body's right outside. They didn't bury it together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. May I ask another question? It's just about the meaning of Israel, the name, because many years ago, something like 10 years ago, I read that Israel means God sows. Yeah, sows. Yeah.
Sows, like this, sowing, S-O-W?
Yeah, like spreading the seeds.
Oh, sows seeds. It could be. There's a lot of different meanings. Yud Sar Kel, that God is the king.
I read this many years ago.
You're probably right. I don't know. I'm not familiar with it.
No. I'm just asking if it is one of the meaning, that's one of the accepted translation of.
Oh, I don't know. It could be. I don't know. I'm not familiar with it, but it doesn't mean it's not.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Toda raba. Shabbat tov.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. With that, I'll leave you. Thank you so much, everybody. Oops, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. I apologize. Okay, everybody have a great rest of the
Thank you,
day.
Rabbi.
See you, my friend.